gonna show you the most creative countertop I have ever done. Stay tuned and enjoy the video. Shannon came to me a while back and wanted to do something really super creative. We're using 6 colors, and those colors include turquoise, purple, and copper. Everyone that knows me knows those are my wheelhouse colors. All right, so Shannon, why epoxy countertops?
I saw Rhonda had started epoxy, and it could be unique to how I wanted it. And I love bright colors, especially purple and turquoise. This is the result. She did a great job, and I couldn't be happier with how they turned out.
All right, so what we're using is the Stone Coat Countertop Art Coat. And the reason we're using Art Coat is because Art Coat has the most UV protection, and it's gonna keep our colors really vibrant. I really want those colors to stay bright. All right, so it's a 1-to-1, and we're gonna start with B first.
Okay.
We're gonna be using a little over 4 ounces per square foot. And so we're gonna be mixing up a little over 112 ounces. Now, if you're not familiar and experienced doing epoxy, be really careful and mindful when you're mixing up large amounts. Remember, a lot of epoxy in a volume bucket will exotherm or heat up very, very quickly. So as soon as you get your epoxy mixed, you need to make sure to get it into smaller containers as quickly as possible. The reason we put B in first is because B is less viscous. It's thinner, and it will allow part A, which is thicker or more viscous, to fall down and level out, and we get a more accurate reading. Usually I mix for about 2 minutes, but for this amount, I'll probably bump that up to 3 minutes. Start with your drill on low. You don't want to incorporate a lot of air. And then you can very slowly add speed to your drill. Now, if you're doing this in a cold environment, you will notice that your epoxy will turn almost white. And the reason of that is because you've got air, but don't worry. As soon as you pour it out and torch, it'll go back clear. Okay, so after I've mixed about 3 minutes, I'm gonna come in with a paint stick and I'm gonna scrape my edges. And the reason I do that is because there's unmixed material that's on the side and the bottom of this bucket. And if I don't scrape my edges and then continue to mix for just a little bit, I'm gonna have unmixed material when I pour it out on my surface, and that's what's gonna cause sticky spots. You can either hand mix, or if it's a big, large amount like this, I'll just scrape my edges and then I'll mix just a minute or so more. Check my edges one more time. Everything looks good. All right, we're ready to add the colors. What I like to do first is just put the amount that I think I want to use, and then I can always add more as we go. Okay, so I have my epoxy in, and now I'm gonna start mixing my colors. As you can see, these cups we used in the previous pour, so I know what color goes in what cup. Now, the amount that you use of each color, that's a preference. If you do something like this, I know Shannon wanted to lean a little higher on the turquoise, and so that's what we're doing, and also with our brown opaque dye. So here are the colors that we're using. We're using the Alumalite Brown Opaque Dye, Color Passion Vibrant Purple Powder, Erika Shimmer by Color Passion, that's a paste, Just Resin, this is what makes this whole kitchen, Just Resin Aquamarine. It is absolutely amazing. It's kind of a color shift paste, and it's got the greens and the purples, and it looks like a peacock. It is absolutely gorgeous. Then we're using our white Alumalite dye, and as an accent, we're coming in with the Just Resin Copper. All right, so I have all my colors in their cups, and I have a magic trial. And guys, this is really what makes this finish. and you'll see how I use it in just a minute. All right, so I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna start off first with my brown opaque dye, and I'm just gonna lay out some blobs of color, just kind of randomly all over the top. And I don't wanna be in a pattern. Some areas I'm gonna have bigger brown, some I'm gonna have smaller. It's just gonna be very random. And I'm actually gonna let Shannon finish this since this is her countertop. All right, Shannon, while you're doing that, I'm gonna come in with our Erika Shimmer, and I'm gonna basically just do the same thing. Now make sure you get plenty of color by those edges because you really wanna have enough of that product to go over the edge. And again, I'm just randomly pouring color, some areas bigger than other areas. And then I'm gonna save a little bit of product in the cup for some surprises at the end. All right, now I'm gonna come in with our aquamarine. Same thing, you wanna take this, Shannon? What I'm doing here is just taking the brown and just doing some drizzling just to get the rest of it out of the cup. All right, now I'm coming in with vibrant purple, I believe was the name of that color. Now what we're doing is we're basically just filling in the spots that don't have any color. Now this color recipe is definitely not for everyone, but with her color scheme in her home, it's going to be perfect. And also, you guys can do this technique with any colors. I just recommend that you do sample boards first to make sure that when we start melding your colors together, that you don't get secondary colors that you don't like. So we've done several sample boards to ensure that the color that we're using are going to stay like we like them. All right, last color. Now we've got the white. And with the white, all I'm doing is pouring between my colors now. Some areas are heavier than others. Again, I'm making sure I have plenty of material on those edges. And this bar top here has got an open edge on both sides. So we've got a rock edge on both sides and both ends. All right, just kind of spread that out. There we go. And our last color is gonna be our copper. Okay, so now I'm gonna torch before I start to meld, and it'll loosen up the material and make it a little easier to meld. Okay, so the key to this is as I use my magic trowel and I kind of skip over the surface, I don't over meld. If I start over melding colors like this, I will get really a yucky brown color. So I'm gonna do long strokes, different directions, and pulling it off the edge. I don't wanna go over one area more than say maybe once or twice because that's when I start over melding my product. Don't overthink it. You can also do this with a Bondo spreader. The Bondo spreader, the stroke lines will be a little thinner. It'll be easier to over meld. So you have to be really careful if you're using a Bondo spreader. Make sure you go different directions and get plenty of product on those edges. I'm just going back over and making sure we have equal amount of product over the entire surface. Again, being very, very, very careful that I don't over meld. Shannon, if you want to go and just very lightly touch to break any surface tension. If you have any area on top of your surface that's not covered, you'll just tap it with your finger and that surface tension will close. Try to tap as little as you can so it doesn't create like mud. All right, I'm a torch. Now, as we heat, the product's gonna start to self-level and start to run over the edges. I'll help it a little bit by pulling it with my finger. But since we have a rock edge and I've pre-fogged my surface with the colors that we're using in the pour, those colors are gonna pop through the resin. And that's actually the exact look I'm going for. Now, one thing I will do is after this color coat dries, I'll come back with a glaze and I'll glaze these edges just to give them a pop of and make them look a little more realistic. Where I'm real low on color, here I'll go pull some from the cups where we had material left in our cups and I'll cover some of these areas. But as this material starts to self-level and come over, all of this will fill in. Remember, epoxy likes to go where epoxy has already been. So by me putting the epoxy on the edge, I'm encouraging all of this epoxy to start flowing over. Okay, Shannon, we're done. What do you think?
I think they turned out awesome, and I think I made the right decision to go with epoxy over the granite. I can't wait to get them installed and do the
Me either.
after.
That's going to be a whole video on itself, because I have never done countertops with all these colors, and I know your space and how big and how open it is, and I think this is going to be absolutely stunning. I cannot wait for you guys to see some pictures of the actual install. Okay, so it's been 24 hours. Our color coat is dry, and now it's time to sand and apply our clear flood coat. We're going to use the same epoxy, the art coat, to do our clear flood coat. Now, I'm going to sand with an orbital sander. You don't have to use an orbital. You can use a hand sander, and I'm going to hit my edges with a Scotch-Brite scrubby so that I don't burn through my edges. Okay, anytime you come up on any imperfections in your color coat, now's a great time to address that. I'm going to go over that with my sander and smooth it all out. Any scratches that I put on my color coat, I'm not worried about that, because all of those scratches are going to disappear once we put the clear flood coat. All right, like I said, I'm going to come back and do my edges, because remember, the epoxy is very thin because it's on a vertical surface. Also, on my rock edges, I intentionally let some of the original rock of the Bondo, the effect, kind of poke through, because it really makes this look very authentic. But you have to be super careful, because you can burn through it really easy. These Scotch-Brite pads work great. And all you're trying to do is kind of basically just take a little bit of that sheen off and create a tooth for the epoxy flood coat to bite onto. So the tops are sanded, my edges are scuffed with the Scotch-Brite pad, and now what I often do to my rock edges is put on a glaze. This is something that I did when I was a faux finisher. By putting a glaze, it really makes that rock edge and that texture pop. In this case, I'm going to be using the Rust-Oleum decorative glaze in Java Brown. It's just any type of antiquing glaze will work. My favorite glaze actually is by General Finishes. But like I said, any glaze is going to work. Alrighty, so what I'll do, and I do have several videos that are very detailed in how to do glazing on your edges, and I will link those in the description of this video. All right, so I'll come in with the chip brush, nothing fancy. And because a glaze is very thin, it's meant to have a long open time. I'm not rushed on how long this takes me. Okay, so I'm just going to paint it on there. I'm not really worried. I just want to get color on that edge. And then I'm going to come back with a soft cloth. I'll be honest, cheesecloth actually works the best. And then I'm going to very softly remove it. And what's happening is all of that glaze is going to stay in the low areas of the rock edge. Now, this is where you come back and decide how much of that texture or that glaze do you want. I can come back now and tap it, take some of it out, make it look a little less aggressive if I don't want it to be, boom, really in my face with that glaze. If I don't like it, I can come back with water. If you're using a water-based glaze, I could wipe it all off and I could start again. That easy. I've got tons of open time, and each glaze will be different depending on what brand you're using as to how much open time you have. But most glazes have a pretty good working time. Just come back and wipe it down, come back and stipple. And I really like to make sure I get it up on top where I have maybe some of those low areas. All right, so I'll let my glaze dry for about 24 hours, depending on, again, what glaze you're using and your temperature and humidity. You want to make sure, especially if it's a water-based glaze, that it's 100% dry before I come over with my clear flood coat. Okay, our glaze is dried. It's been 24 hours. I've cleaned, ready for the clear flood coat. Now, the clear flood coat is the same epoxy, the same product that we used for our color coat. But now we're only going to put a tad bit of Just Resin Halo. This is my husband's very favorite glitter. Just enough of the halo to give a tiny bit of sparkle. That's it. I don't want anything else, just a hint of the sparkle. And we're going to be doing this flood coat at 3 ounces per square foot. Now that's quite a bit less than we did on our color coat. But for our flood coats, that's all we need to do. If you'd like a little more information on how to do a clear flood coat, check out the description of this video and I'll put a link to that video. All right, what I like to do is torch it really quickly before I'll trowel it out, level things out. It just makes it a little bit easier. A lot of you guys see me use my hand, and I do use my hand, but on larger surfaces, I like to first spread it out with a trowel. Then I'll come back and instead of chopping with a brush, I'll use my hand. In my opinion, a brush, I have a chance of getting a bristle. Plus, in my opinion, also, a brush will entrain more bubbles. I don't get near the bubbles when I use my hand. So we sell these trowels on our website, and they're designed to have the perfect angle and leave the perfect amount of epoxy on your surface. If when you're using it, you keep this bottom parallel to your surface. So if I go straight up and down, I push too much product. If I put it to where this and this are at the same angle, it's going to leave the perfect amount of product on my surface. Okay, so once I have my product pretty much spread out over the surface, now I come in with my hand, and this is my favorite part. The reason I like to use my hand is because now as I take this product, I can use my fingers and push it over the edge, and I'm not going to use as much product, waste as much product as if I were to push it over with a trowel. Plus, I can take my fingers, take that epoxy, roll it down, and make sure I have a really good seal up underneath my edge. I like to run my hand over the top to make sure I don't have any debris that's in the epoxy. I can feel it, and I can also feel where I have high and lows. So if I have too much product in one area, I can move it back over to another area. All right, everything's spread out nice and even. I've run all the epoxy up underneath the edges, make sure everything's sealed. Now I'll come in and I'll torch it 3 times, waiting about 2 to 5 minutes in between torching. Then I'm gonna turn all of the airflow in our room off, turn the lights off, and let this cure for 24 hours. If you're concerned with your edges being too thin, you want more durability on your edges, what you can do is before you do your whole flood coat, you can mix up just enough epoxy to do your edges. And then what you'll do is you'll come in, you'll use your hand, a paintbrush, whatever you want to do, and you'll paint just your edges. This also applies to if you're doing a vertical backsplash. Let that dry, then come over and do the whole flood coat, the whole surface. So the reason I do this is because now my edges have 2 layers of epoxy. Therefore, I'm not really worried about the durability. So that is a pro tip. Don't torch too late after you've poured the epoxy. Don't come in 30 minutes later, an hour later, and think that you need to retorch. What that does is cause ripples. And the reason it causes ripples is because at that time, the epoxy is already starting to thicken and cure. So if we come in with heat, which makes epoxy more fluid, and we start torching, what we're doing is we're torching a section, and then as we skip, we're torching, and we skip and we torch. What's happening is we're heating up a strip of epoxy, then the next strip is not going to be the same temperature as this strip. So as we torch, we're creating different areas that have different temperatures. Now, as they start to cure or keep curing, it'll start to give you a wave. So that's one reason that you'll get waves. Also, torching late into the pour will actually cause bubbles to rise up where you would not have had bubbles if you didn't torch. So at this point, I'm not really worried about dust bunnies because I know that I'm going to be applying the ultimate top coat. In this case, the homeowner wants the matte finish, which actually is my favorite. It really makes those colors pop and it takes away that glare, which in my opinion looks very plasticky, fake. So the matte finish is what they've chosen. So any dust bunnies that happen to land on the surface, I'm going to be sanding out anyway. So I don't fret over trying to cover it or protect it because I know that when I sand in preparation for the UTC, I'll take all those bunnies out. Let me know what UTC, or if you would use UTC, would you do on this particular countertop? I would love to know your opinion. Also, guys, let me know in the comments below if you like these wild colored recipes. I know I love doing them and I love sharing them with you guys. If you're not a member of our RK3 Design Epoxy Insiders, please join that group. It's on our Facebook page and we would love to have you. We have over 5,000 members at this point that share lots of great tips and tricks. All of these products we used are available on our website, rk3designs.com. Remember, we always do free shipping on all orders over $100. And we also ship same day if you order before noon, Texas time. Remember, don't be scared. Move forward and be creative. See you next week.